Well, before we get started, we have somebody, instead of special music, we got somebody that wants to share something. His name is Michael Crook, and he's been a part of the Zenas family here for a while now, and he asked if he could share something, and I was excited for it, so come on up.
All right, this ain't normally my thing. I'm usually yelling at people and stuff, so. Anyways, something cool happened to me back in October, mid-October. I got to go out on what they call the Fourth Musketeer Extreme Character Challenge. And it was a really neat experience. Big spiritual experience for me and eye-opening experience. I can't go into too much because this is kind of a sales pitch for all the men out here, because I really would like to see several individuals, men in this, that I'm looking at right now, participate in this. And it doesn't matter how old you are, anybody I think over the age of 18, they need to probably go and do this. What was that walk that you were talking about? What's the man's walk? Yeah, it's not like that. He told me that they fed you great every night, and no, it's not like that. So if you want a big experience, you need to get with me, and I'll turn you on to how to go about signing up for that. How this kind of happened is, I think it was July 29th. I lost a really good friend of mine, suicide. He was happened to be my boss, one of my bosses. My dad is actually my boss. But, James Riddle, he was our major. He was struggling with some horrible things in his life, and looking back now, all the signs are there. I just, what could I have done? I could have prayed a little bit more, I guess. But anyways, Mike Soika, who is one of he's now working for IMPD. He was my first partner when I came out on the police force. Him and I, there's nobody else that I've come across that I'm working with now that clicked the way him and I clicked. We'd go to a run and we just knew exactly what was in each of us, what we're going to do, and we did it. And we didn't ask each other to do something, we just already knew. And that kind of relationship's hard to get. So his wife, Autumn, actually signed him up for this extreme character challenge. And I get a text message from him. Hey, how would you like to go camping and hiking in the Appalachian Mountains? And I said, sounds fun. He goes, it's $300. And I said, it doesn't sound that fun. I'm out. So then Autumn goes above me and goes right to Katie and says that their church is going to go ahead and pay for it, and that Autumn really wants me to go with Mike, because he's been, once again, he was friends with James Riddle, and he was having a really difficult time with this, and he needed someone to go with him. And so I, just like any other guy, I'm not very energetic about going, and so we get this list that tells you everything you need to go out on this 72-hour extreme character challenge. And after looking at the list, I just did not want that day to come. I did not want to go. And so, I guess what I'm getting at is I end up going, and never once prior to this experience have I had any guess, interactions with God. We hear about everyone talking about how God spoke with them, and I never had that. And, I really wasn't that much of I'm a believer, yes I am. But I wasn't, I don't go to church every Sunday because unfortunately work doesn't allow me to. But my relationship was kind of sad. And I was having a real tough time. And there were some things in this challenge over those 72 hours that I came across that I realized that, God loves me, and He's there for me, and He's pushed me through a lot of things. And during those 72 hours, there were a lot of things I came across that I wanted to quit, but I didn't, and I didn't because of God. And then just recently, I got tasked with doing some stuff for Katie out in the garage. She wanted me to cut some things. And so I never had, like I said, God never reached out to me or anything. And it was pretty neat because I get, the chop saw out and everything, and I get ready to cut a piece of wood, and chop saw wouldn't work. What's going on with this thing? So I start messing with the cord, and everything looks great. I go and check if it's plugged in. So then I end up unplugging it, plugging something else in that I knew would work, and it worked. So I knew something was wrong. So I go back over to the saw, and I'm messing with the saw, and I just used it the day before. So I know it works. And I get it plugged back in, and I'm trying to get something cut, and it's just not firing up. So I got to looking at the saw a little bit more, and the cord was wrapped underneath, and I would have cut the cord if that saw would have came on. I would have cut the cord as I was chopping a piece of wood. And so I removed the cord and untangled it, and as soon as I did that, pushed the button, and the saw just fired right up. So that was my first experience that actually popped out to me and showed that God's there. And I find myself praying more now, whereas I didn't. And I really just try to give it all to Him. And that's the only way I'm trying to live anymore, is just let Him guide me. So, anybody wants to go on this, like I said, it's $300. They also have a Mescathlon, which is in Greece and Ecuador and South. There's all different kinds of places. If you're struggling with something, and it's 72 hours. I wasn't a believer in it, but I am now. It's pretty good. Thanks.
Amen.
Thank you, Nick.
All right, the children can go back to Children's Church. I actually didn't know what Michael was going to speak about, but I knew that it would go along with the sermon and everything. That's why God works. And today is all about hope. I know we had the Unity candle. Was what Unity candle? A lot of weddings lately. Advent candle was about hope, and hope changes everything. And I just seen this. So I was looking about some things on hope on the internet, and I was doing some research what hope is and different things. And I came across this slide, and I know we see, it's a little bit. You may think, well, Christmas is a month away, and yeah, just a little bit of ways away, but it's time to start in the Advent season. So whether we like it or not, here it comes with all the Christmas stuff. But then it made me stop and think about what I find hope in. And I kind of have those moments every once in a while where I'm like, God, where are you at in this? And then my spot is outside looking at the stars, and which is awesome because this star in the middle, it's the day that changed everything. And this isn't going to necessarily be a Christmas sermon, but know that without Christmas, we wouldn't have the hope. So it doesn't matter if we celebrate it for one day, or if you don't celebrate it at all, or if you celebrate it all year long. It's because of Jesus that we have hope. And I'm so thankful for that. Before we get going, let me pray. God, we just thank you for today, God. I thank you for the story, God, that we all have our stories, and it's so amazing when you show us who you are, God. That things happen to us, and then it pops into our heads that it could have been something else or a coincidence. But then we look what's really going on, and it's you working in our lives. And God, we just thank you for loving us so very much. God, for being there for us, God, and for being our God, and for sending Jesus. In his name we pray. Amen. So, hope changes. I know it says hope changes everything, but if you're going, let's say, you're going to work in the morning, and you think, I think it's kind of like the word hope is used kind of like the word love. We kind of use it often, and we don't think about what it means. For instance, you're probably thinking on the way to work, man, I hope today goes fast, so that way I can get home and get some things done. And I hope that this is there when I get home, right? You may have said it before. And then your tire goes flat. And then you have different hopes. My hope is that I can get the tire off, or have another tire, a spare tire, or I hope somebody comes along to help me, or I hope that, this or that. So then your hope is a little bit different. I hope my boss is going to be okay with me being late to work today. And then, you're hoping for the AAA guy to come maybe, or whatever it is. Your hopes change, right? I didn't realize how much I said the word hope until I started monitoring my conversations with people or my text messages. And I can look back and see I use the word hope all the time. And I think about, my hope changes all the time in the little things. Is it wrong to hope that today goes fast? Maybe not. Is it wrong to hope that somebody comes to help me with the car? Probably not. But I think that we get so used to the word hope that we kind of take it for granted. Since we're always hoping this is going to happen, that our hope can sometimes change. And we use it so loosely that we forget about the true hope sometimes because we hear the word hope sometimes. It's kind of like, when people use God's name as a swear word. We hear it so much anymore that sometimes that's the devil's way of kind of getting us to miss the point that the name is still the power, and Jesus is still power. But we miss that because our hope kind of changes in our worldly aspects, and you can maybe agree with that. And kind of monitor this week how much you say the word hope and how you meant it. I mean, it can go anything from, I hope that the dog doesn't get into cockroaches later because it's a mess. I mean, that's how loosely we use it. We use the word hope. But I was looking up some hope and some different things, and I love what it said in the definition, and I don't have this on the board, but I was looking it up. If you look it up on the internet, it's to want something to happen or to be true and think that it could happen or be true. So a hope is something that we want, but then we think that it can actually happen. It says it's a verb. It can be used as a verb most of the time, which if you think about it, hope is a verb more because it's something you're wanting or thinking, so you're doing something. To desire with expectation, to expect with confidence, trust. I like that because it just says straight up, to trust. So when I look at the Bible and all the places that says hope, it also goes with trust. It can also be used as a noun to feeling of wanting something to happen and thinking that it could happen, a feeling. So it can also be used as a feeling. But it can also be, I love this definition, someone or something that may be able to provide help. Someone or something that gives you a reason for hoping. And I love that because that's where we're at today. When we talk about our true hope, that hope changes everything. We're talking about, our hope in Jesus changes everything. And that He is someone that may be able to provide help or that gives us a reason for hoping. Because honestly, I've tried all the things of the world to hope in, and quite frankly, they just don't come through for me. And I look back and I'm like, what makes faith real to me? What makes Jesus real to me? It's the fact that I can go through everyday life and hoping in all this little stuff and trying all these different things that the world tries, but they don't give me the fulfillment of hope and something that's real that I'm looking for. All the stuff fades away, it says in Ecclesiastes, but hope remains. And I love that. But there's some times that we live like we don't have hope. And that's the first part I want to start is Ephesians chapter 2, verse 12. It says, in those days, you were living apart from Christ. You were excluded from citizenship among the people of Israel, and you did not know the covenant promises God had made to them. You lived in this world without God and without hope. And I think it's not too hard to say, if you look around, we're seeing a lot of people living in this world without God and without hope. And Satan's doing a good job throwing other things in there that'll take God's place. Like, hey, this will make you happy, or that'll make you happy. It's all about being happy. But God says, no. In those days, back in the days, they were living apart from Christ. And I wonder, I don't know where you're at in your walk, because I don't know your hearts as well as I do my own. But a lot of times, I remember the days where I was living completely apart from Christ. And it was kind of sad, like he said earlier. It's kind of sad the way it made you feel. But you're excluded from what God could have for you. And if we keep our eyes on hope of Christ, like the candle is saying today, God promises to bring hope. Hebrews chapter 6, verse 13 through 20. It talks about God bringing the promise of hope. It says, for example, there was God's promise to Abraham. Since there was no one greater to swear by, God took an oath in his own nature, saying, I will certainly bless you, and I will multiply your descendants beyond number. Which is interesting, because God's saying this to Abraham, who's getting very old at this point, who has no boys or descendants. So it's huge that God is saying that I will bless you. He had hope that God was telling the truth. Because it says in verse 15, then Abraham waited patiently, and he received what God had promised. And I think that's the thing about hope, is are we willing to wait patiently for things to come about, for things to happen, for our experiences with God, to point out or to see what God's doing. Situations where people are sick or ill or whatever it may be, are we willing to wait patiently for what God has promised? Because quite frankly, there's a lot of days that I'm like, God, it would be so much better to be in heaven right now than be here. So why am I here? But I'm waiting patiently to receive what God's promised. That's what hope is waiting patiently sometimes. Verse 16, it says, now when people take an oath, they call on someone greater than themselves to hold them to it. And without any question, that oath is binding. That would be good if people still did that with binding oaths. Verse 17, God also bound himself with an oath so that those who received the promise could be perfectly sure that he would never change his mind. So God has given both his promise and his oath. These two things are unchangeable because it is impossible for God to lie. Which is, quite frankly, that's awesome. If we didn't even say anything else about hope, it's awesome that all of our hope says it's impossible for God to lie. And he's proved true with everything else in the Bible. Why would he not prove true for the other things he said is going to happen? And I love this. This is our key verses here. Therefore, we who have fled to him for refuge can have great confidence as we hold to the hope that lies before us. So, basically, having great confidence, and we flee to God because that's the only place we know where to go, because he leads everything now when we accept him in our hearts, in our minds, and say, take over fully. It says in verse 19, this hope is a strong and trustworthy anchor for our souls. And I put that as our main verse today because I love boats and different things, and I love that even in the storms, the anchor is a very important part. It keeps you grounded. The anchor, the hope, is a strong and trustworthy anchor for our souls. It says it leads us through the curtain into God's inner sanctuary that Jesus has already gone in there for us. He has become our eternal high priest in the order of Melchizedek. Basically, no longer do we have to go through anybody else. Our hope is in Jesus, because when he died, the curtain tore in two. And it says, Now we can go right up to God.